Guys, okay, so we're starting with 2.8 and a half, and that's because we're inserting a lesson here that's absolute value inequalities. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. And there's two different cases. Okay, remember that absolute value can normally either have a value that's either going to be positive or negative that we plug in for that x. So when I'm looking here, I can have x is, because x can be positive, is greater than or equal to 5, or I can have negative x is greater than or equal to 5. Well, wait a minute. Technically, can I have a negative x? No. So I've got to get rid of that negative. Remember, that's understood to be a -1. So I'm going to divide by -1 to both, which is going to give me x is, oh, I'm dividing by a negative. That means I've got to remember my rule of flip the inequality symbol. So this becomes x is less than or equal to 5. All right, so we're going to plot both of these on a graph, okay? Because it's equal to, it's a filled in circle. So I have x is greater than or equal to 5. I'm going to go find 5. Put a dot filled in and it's greater than, so I'm going in this direction. There's my arrow. Now I'm doing the next one, which is going to be orange. X is less than or equal to, oh, that's a -5. Don't forget your negatives, like I just did, because that changes your information. So I go to the -5. This is orange. Filled in circle. And then I'm going less than. The way that you write this, okay, you use interval notation. Which means because it's, excuse me, open-ended over here, I'm going to use a parentheses. And it can go on for forever to -infinity. So I write -infinity, comma, and then it stops at -5. So it's equal to, so it's a bracket. And then there's nothing, so it can be on this side or it can be on this side. So this is an or statement. And then I'm going to write an interval notation for this half. Well, it's equal to, so it's a bracket at 5, comma, and then it goes on for forever to +infinity. So I have the infinity symbol, and then it's a parentheses because it doesn't stop. And that is the example for case 1, when it's a greater than or equal to. All right, now we look at when it's less than or equal to. Okay, so again, remember that this value inside of here can be positive or negative. So I'm going to have x is less than or equal to 8. There's the positive scenario. Then we have the negative scenario, which is negative x is less than or equal to 8. Well, can't have a negative x. So I divide by -1 again to both sides. And remember, we got to flip the inequality symbol. So it becomes x is greater than or equal to -8. And now I graph each one. Okay, so I've got x is less than or equal to 8. So I'm going to go and find 8. It's less than or equal to, so it's a filled in dot and it's going in this direction. Okay, then I've got x is greater than or equal to -8. So I've got a filled in dot going in this direction. Well, wait a minute, they're going together. That means it is everything that's in between the two dots. It is everything that's in between those two dots. So when we write our interval notation, it's kind of starts at the -8 and it's equal to, so I have open parentheses, -8, comma, and then it goes all the way to 8 and it stops there because it's equal to, and I put the bracket. That's my interval notation. Now let's kind of write down, what does all this mean? Okay. Absolute value inequalities are really compound inequalities. Because you should remember that we had or possibilities and possibilities, which we're going to list and talk about right now. So if we have less than which is the less than or less than or equal to, that is the and scenario. If we have greater than, is greater than, or greater than or equal to, that is the or scenario. Okay, our steps for solving. Step one, isolate the absolute value expression, just like we did for absolute value equations. Okay, create two cases. That's step two. Use the KISS method, keep it, switch to set up the two cases. I would just say solve to get absolute. No. I don't know what that is, so we're just going to scratch through that. Okay. Set up as positive and negative case. For the negative case, solve to make positive. That just makes sense based on what we did for these two examples up here. If it doesn't, come ask me to clarify. And then step three, we solve both inequalities. And then we have step four where we have to graph. Okay. And you also need to make sure that you write it in interval notation. All right, here we go. Let's work some examples now. Okay. So I'll jump down and I'm going to look at number 3 because number 1 and number 2 were just like the examples that we did up above. So we're going to step up our game here a little bit. All right. So this means I've got the positive scenario, which is going to be x minus 1 is greater than 6. But then I've also got negative x minus 1 is greater than 6. Now, you're going to be like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Remember, we had a positive scenario and we had a negative scenario. I'm going to work one of these at a time. Okay. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides here. And I get x is greater than 7. All right. Now, let's look at the next case. Well, you're like, well, wait a minute, where did this negative come from? What do I do with this negative that's on the outside? Remember, that's like a -1, correct? So I'm going to divide by -1 on both sides, or you can distribute it and solve. I like to get rid of it on the outside first. So now we flip this. So I have x minus 1 is less than -6. And now I continue to solve. So I have plus 6 plus, not sorry, plus 1, not plus 6, plus 1 plus 1. So I end up with x is less than -5. Can't do my math in my head here. Okay, so now we graph. All right, so I have x is greater than 7. That's an open circle because it's not equal to, and it's greater than, so I'm shading in this direction. Then I have x is less than -5. So that's an open circle on -5, and it's everything less than. Now for the interval notation, okay? It's going in this direction, so it's at negative infinity. So I have open parentheses, negative infinity, comma, and then it stops at -5, but it does not equal -5. So therefore, that's a parentheses. Since there's the space in between, this is an or statement. It's also a less than, so it's an or statement. And then we have open parentheses 7, comma, positive infinity, because it goes on for forever in the positive direction, close parentheses. All right, let's move on to the next example. Okay, let's do number 6. Wait a minute, this one just, that was greater than, so we'll do it. Oh, sorry, I said earlier so for greater than, remember it's an or statement. I was calling this a less than, but that's greater than, so it's an or statement. Now we're gonna work a less than, so we're gonna work number 6. Okay, so first things first, I gotta get the absolute value symbols by itself. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides first. So now I have absolute value, x plus 3, absolute value is less than 4. Now I separate it into my 2 problems. Remember, I've got the positive scenario and the negative scenario. So I have x plus 3 is less than 4. And then I have negative x plus 3 is less than 4. And now I solve. Subtract 3, subtract 3. X is less than 1. Divide by the -1. Flip my inequality symbol. So I have x plus 3 is greater than -4. Subtract 3, subtract 3. X is greater than -7. And now I graph. This is a less than symbol, so I know I'm going to have, this is an and statement. So therefore, my graph should be in between 2 things. So if x is less than 1, it's just less than, so it's an open circle at 1. And then we've got -7 is an open circle. It says less than 1, so I'm going in this direction. And then it says greater than -7, so I'm going in this direction. So it's everything in between. There's my graph. Now to write my interval notation. So it's going from open parentheses, because it's not equal to, it's an open circle, -7, comma, and then it lands at 1, but it's not equal to it, so it's a parentheses. There we go. That problem is done. Okay, moving right along. Let's jump ahead, and we're going to look down now at number 10. Okay. Solving it just like we did the equations. Okay, I got to get all the absolute value symbols by itself first. So I'm going to subtract 11, and I get 1/2 absolute value. 4x minus 4 absolute value is less than or equal to 14. Okay, now I'm going to change colors. I got to get rid of this 1/2. Well, the way I do that is divide by 1/2, which is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I multiply by 2, it cancels, and now I have absolute value of 4x minus 4 is less than or equal to 28. Where am I getting 28? Whew, Miss Wilson needs to go home. I obviously can't do calculations. 15 minus 11 is 4, not 14. So therefore, this is going to be 4 times 2, which is 8. Let's see how many of you come up and tell me about my mistake now. Okay, here we go. So I have the positive scenario, which is 4x minus 4 is less than or equal to 8. And then we have the negative scenario of 4x minus 4 is less than or equal to 8. And now we solve. Okay, so this is 2 steps. So I'm going to have to add 4. Let's make sure I can do my calculations this time. So we have 4x is less than or equal to 8 plus 4 is 12. Divide by 4, divide by 4. X is less than or equal to 3. Okay, now we come up with the green one. You can't, it's time getting not be able to see. So we divide by -1, divide by -1, which means I flip that inequality. So I now have 4x minus 4 is greater than or equal to -8. Add 4, add 4. 4x, this zeroes out, there, is greater than or equal to -4. Divide by 4, divide by 4. This is, I'm not dividing by a negative. This one just happens to be negative. So I'm not dividing by a negative, so I don't flip the inequality symbol. I end up with x is greater than or equal to -1. And now we graph. Okay, so we have x is less than or equal to 3. It's equal to, so it's going to be a filled in circle on 3 going in this direction. And then I've got x is greater than or equal to -1. So that's a filled in circle going in this direction. So remember, it's everything in between. So my interval notation is going to be a bracket from -1, comma 3 to the closing bracket because it's got filled in circles. Remember, if you've got questions, pause and repeat, or come and ask me. You're finishing the notes and the homework, and I think there might be an activity to do after. Y'all have a great day. Thank you. Bye.